Welcome, everybody, to a one-on-one interview like I always do. This is the Triple B Experience. I'm your host, Bad Bubba Brewer, and we have a guest this evening. He is the host of One of a Kind with RVD. He's also a host on his podcast show, also with Gagne and Magnum, a new podcast about the old school ways of professional wrestling. He is a wrestling journalist. He's the editor of Inside the Ropes. He's a recap writer for MLW. He's an actor. And he is a Dean Martin connoisseur. So everybody, welcome to the Triple B Experience. Dominic DeAngelo. How you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, man, that last one popped me big time.
I enjoy it, though. I like Dean Martin, too. I'm an Elvis fanatic. So.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And Elvis was obsessed with Dean Martin. Like, he idolized Dean Martin, apparently. And Dean Martin, actually, from what I heard, wasn't that big of a fan of Elvis because he was like the new wave coming in, apparently. But it's very, very cool and all tight. Like, Dean Martin, I think Elvis called him the King of Cool, and that's where he got that thing. That was tagline a lot of the time. So.
Oh, yeah. And how long have you been a Dean Martin fan all your life?
All my life. My dad was like idolized Dean Martin. Dean, obviously, he's from Steubenville, Ohio.
Okay, yes.
In our thick of the woods there. And, my dad's uncle, Cosmo Catrone, ran a gambling front in Steubenville, and Dean Martin was a croupier there.
Okay.
So there was some ties for sure to what he was doing there. And so like my dad was just a big fan, and I just love Dean Martin.
Dude, that's awesome. Now let me ask you a question, Dom. Do you when you do karaoke? Do you do some Dean Martin karaoke?
Wow, I'm like always intimidated to do the singers and standards aspect of it. I've done karaoke, but it's more like Matchbox 20 or Third Eye Blind. Or
you just never did. You never did the crooner where you're, okay.
Well, so the one time it was during a pep rally in high school. I can't remember all the details, but I remember getting called up in front of the Ridgeway area high school class, like the whole school, and I had to sing. I sang like "Fly Me to the Moon," like a couple lyrics of that, but that was it so far.
That was it. Okay,
and I was a Guys and Dolls too in high school. So
yeah, that's where I seen the acting part. You've been doing that most of your life too.
Yeah, basically. So to be forthright, I haven't done anything really since moving to Pittsburgh. Actually, like this coming up here, Mr. Smalls is having like an independent 24-hour theater festival. And I just submitted my stuff for that, where I'll just be an actor. So you just learn the whole play in one day, and then you put it on at Mr. Smalls that night. So that'll be my first foray back onto the stage in quite a while. So yes, but I've done acting, and I did it in Philly and was in the Rocky movie, Creed.
Speaking, wow, you heard the bad news, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Man, Apollo, dang it. It's such a bummer, man.
Yeah, it just takes me back to when I was a kid, because I'm, in my 50s and stuff like that. And these guys that I, watched as a kid, there's not too many action stars left in this genre of nowadays in Hollywood. And it's just not, the movies aren't like they did when I was a kid in the 80s. You know what I mean?
No. And you think about somebody like Carl Weathers and stuff like that. He's very timeless. He had that timeless vibe about him where it's just like, oh, he's going to be around. And then boom, all of a sudden, he's not.
I know, because I know they probably had some stuff planned for The Mandalorian, and I don't know what they're going to do now. So
that's a good point too. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's something. So let me get started on this journey of how did you become probably a typical a kid in Western Pennsylvania? How did you become in love with the sport of professional wrestling?
Okay, so yeah, I just remember being like 5 or whatever and seeing Hulk Hogan and being like, oh, that guy, wow, how about that? And just being kind of right in the thick of that. So like 1990 and everything. And at that juncture too, Hogan was still, hot, but he was getting there to where, okay, the Hulkamania is kind of going on the down bell curve of this at this juncture. But I was still a fan. And then my brother Marcus, he was my younger brother. Now he's my younger brother. But he got into it too. And I remember me like the baby face. He had to like somebody. We went to a store, and I remember getting the Hulk Hogan Hasbro, and I think the only one the other had was the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and so he had to go with that one. And so he always had to be the villain when I was always the good guy when it came to buying toys and stuff. Anywho, I fell out of wrestling. Didn't last that long. And then I remember flipping through the channels and then seeing Razor Ramon, and boom, I was hooked back in again. So Scott
that hooked you just like that. Watching
that hooked me like I remember. So again, ties to D. Martin. My dad saw Scott Hall, and he's like, "Oh, that guy looks pretty cool." And I was like, yeah, he does. And so I got into him. And then I kind of made the connection in my head. Like, he kind of looks like D. Martin in a lot of ways, Scott Hall and stuff.
The hair slicked back and the way.
The hair slicked back and all that kind of stuff. And super cool, super awesome. So then I was a Razor Ramon fan. Fell out of it again just for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, like, getting word of the NWO and flipping through the channels. And here I see Scott Hall again, but he's not Razor Ramon. He's Scott Hall, and he's blood-soaked shorts and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, he's awesome. Bam, back into it. And then Marcus, my brother, he got back into it too. Initially, it was around the time when Kevin Nash was injured. So he was tagging with Macho Man at that point, Randy Savage. So Marcus kind of started liking the Macho Man. But then once Nash came back and we figured out, they were a team, he was a Kevin Nash fan. And so then that's really when everything basically picked up. And I never really left after that. College, when I got into college, I stopped. Mm-hmm. But hey,
why did you stop in college? Because at that time in the mid '90s, the time that you're talking about was a hot period at that time.
Absolutely. So by the time I got to college, it was 2003. So getting into the ruthless aggression era. Mm-hmm. So like a downturn of the attitude era. NWO was gone. Scott Hall was going through his issues at that point, right in the thick of those. Right. And so I was kind of just lost a little luster for it. I was still like a Kurt Angle fan and a Rock fan and stuff like that. But plus just dealing, like, not going home and like not really having television a lot of the times, like to tune in. I wasn't making it like a weekly occasion to watch wrestling and stuff like that. And so it just kind of went to the wayside for a little bit. But later on, probably around, I want to say like more like 2008 is when I picked it back up again and really got back into it. I don't know. I just remember like Shawn Michaels and Undertaker and that whole rivalry and the WrestleMania stuff. But Bubba, you forgetting too. You are an integral part of my wrestling fandom.
Well, how so?
God bless you. So first wrestling show I ever went to was in DuBois, Pennsylvania, and it was. I think it was for Steel City Championship Wrestling, or was that what it was called back then?
In DuBois, it was the Allied Powers Wrestling Federation.
Okay, so I don't remember your tag team partner, but you were part of a tag team at that juncture, I believe. Okay. And you stood out to me. You were my guy. Like, you were the first independent wrestler that I really got hooked onto. Wow. The main event now, it was Stevie Richards and Julio De Niro. And I believe it was like, I remember Julio De Niro going through a table, I think. And Gilbert was there. The Bushwhackers were there.
Oh, yeah. That was the big outdoor show.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yes, yeah, okay, yeah.
And so you signed an autograph for me, and I was a huge mark at that point. So I went home. I remember going home, and it was like WrestleMania 2000 was the video game at that juncture. I created you on that game, man.
Well, that's what you told me when we saw each other down at the KSWA show. And yeah, to me, it's, I don't know, because I didn't know much about the indies. When I was growing up, did you know a lot about the indies? Because at that time there was like 3 independents, maybe 4 at the time. Did you know anything about the independents at the time?
Not at all. Not at all. Like, I mean, like, the only simple fact that we were aware of was like, oh, Gilbert's going to be there. And my dad worked at Luigi's restaurant in DuBois at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I think Gilbert maybe was in there and stopped by. And my dad was like, hey, you know the wrestler Gilbert? And we're like, yeah. And then there's like the independent show going on there. And so we got word, and yeah, like the Bushwhackers both were really cool to us. And I remember them, I think it was Butch yelled at the kids that got in the ring. He's like, hey, get out of the ring. As they're all like jumping around during the intermission.
I think my tag team partner was Gmo from Cleveland.
Okay. That
Yeah.
kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we did the Pittsburgh Cleveland connection. And then God bless his soul, Robert Hornack was part of the original Brew Crew.
Uh-huh.
He was 17 and 18, and he was like, he was getting ready to, get out there and get on his own and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that was, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It brings back memories of my lovely concussioned brain here. But so, so did you go to any more shows? Did it captivate you? Because like independent stuff now is so hot, but back
Oh,
then it
yeah.
was very, very sporadic.
It was sporadic. So I'm trying to think if I went to a particular indie show when I was still in like high school. I don't think I did. I do know like the first Raw I went to was like 2000, September 2000 in State College, and the main event was The Rock and Chris Benoit, but they also had the ladder match with Edge and Christian against the Hardys, and it was
Oh
the
wow.
first spot. There's that memorable WrestleMania spot where Edge spears Jeff Hardy off of the belts there.
Yep.
But they actually did that spot that night on that Raw. I remember first.
Ooh, I must have
So
practiced.
yeah, so it was a pretty good first experience. We were way up in the nosebleeds at that point and stuff like that. But yeah, since then too, it's like I'm trying to think. We went to a couple shows. I remember going to Bragging Rights 2009 and certain things like that. But it all really started picking up when I started getting into the wrestling writing aspect of it all and like doing it kind of for a side hustle for the
Side
most part.
hustle. Yeah, because back then we didn't have like DVRs. Like if you missed a show back in the late 90s and early 2000s, you weren't catching it anytime.
No
You're done.
way.
It's
Mm-mm.
not like now where you can watch it on your phone or stream it and watch it when you're driving at work. I mean, it's crazy now because I mean, I remember back in the day when Monday Night Raw and Nitro was the big thing, beating Monday Night Football, and that was so huge back then. And if you missed an episode, you were lost because they didn't replay it back then.
There was no way you would see it again. It was like I remember taping it, like if we were away or on VHS and stuff like that, and then going through that.
Stacking the VHS tapes up week after
Yep.
week after week.
Yep.
So how did you get into what made you do the side hustle of the wrestling writing aspect?
Sure. Yeah. So I never really thought of myself like a good writer. Now I went to school for sports journalism. Like that's what I initially. I
Wow,
went to college for that.
Where
And
did you go?
Clarion. So Kurt Angle's.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
So
Okay.
I went there and I did journalism, but it was mostly as a backup. Like I just wanted to do acting and theater was my main thing. And so I
Okay.
minored in theater at Clarion. And so I spent a lot of time in the theater department rather than focusing on my actual major. I would still do stuff like the TV department. I was a weatherman for like a semester and like did DJing later on and shit like that. I'm sorry, am I allowed to swear?
You're allowed to swear.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
good, brother.
So yeah, I did that, but like it was nothing that I really like focused on, to be honest.
Okay.
And so I just kind of like, I don't want to say I coasted through it, but I kind of coasted through it a lot. And when I got out of school and stuff like that, I moved to Philly, did theater, like some non-paid gigs, some kind of paid gigs, nothing.
Yeah, that's a hard concept to do the acting part. And it's like acting is to me would be like independent wrestling where you're getting a hamburger and a Coke.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you're
Uh-huh.
trying to do acting roles and you're not getting like speaking roles and you're not getting paid for that. And I'm sure it's just the same as wrestling.
Basically, yeah, it really is. And it's like, everybody's and like the thing is I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And so like people would travel up to New York and do that stuff. And I think maybe there was a little bit of an intimidation factor going into that too. Like, oh my God, making the trip up to New York and trying auditions out there. So I never really did that. I just basically stuck around the Philadelphia area.
Okay.
And then ultimately I just ended up getting into graphic design and doing a graphic design work for like a women's diamond shop for a couple of years. And then I worked at an old ice cream shop and certain things like that. So I had a couple of different jobs. Ultimately, none of that kind of worked out, stuff like that. My job, I got laid off from that job. And then on top of it, like me and the girlfriend at the time, we broke up. And so I kind of I almost hit the reset button. I was like, well, I've been in Philly for 5 years. I'll move back to the area. And so I moved back to Du Bois, funny enough, and lived there for a month. Yep.
Yeah.
And then after that, I squatted in Pittsburgh for a couple weeks until I found my own place at Highland Park, which was, that's a whole nother story. And then got my own spot, finally in Bloomfield, where I now reside. And anyways, got a job at Whole Foods. And so I was working as a cashier at that time. And so I'm just the express lane, and I overhear conversation of somebody that's coming up through my line. And here he was the book editor for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Tony Norman. And
wow,
he was just talk. I was like, "Oh, are you the book editor?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, do you guys like internships or stuff?" And he was like, "Yeah, we do internships." And I was like, "Well, I'm not a student." He's like, "Yeah, well, we don't do non-student internships, but do you write book reviews?" And I was like, "I do podcast recaps," because at the time I was a big follower of the PW Torch, and I used to do recap. They did pwpodcast.com at the time, and like what they would want is just full written recaps of what was said on certain podcasts. So I would do that, just volunteer to do it and contributed.
How hard was that though? Because you had to have a keen ear to get all that all those notes down.
Yeah, it was a little bit. It was tedious. It was a tedious process. But it was like, oh, I'm getting my stuff out there, and kind of like, hey, my name's out there, and I've always kind of wanted to kind of do stuff in regards to like op-ed pieces or feature pieces and stuff like that. And I was just really infatuated with the work like Wade Keller and Bruce Mitchell and the team that they kind of had over there at the time. And I was like, they had the fun East Coast cast where some other guys were doing it too. And so I was like, dang, that's kind of what got really interested, got me really interested. So anywho, I told him that. He's like, well, give me your information. And I was like, okay. And so I did. And sure enough, it became a pattern where he would go into Whole Foods and he'd drop off books for me to review for the Post-Gazette.
While he's doing some shopping.
While he's doing shopping. And then I would read them, and then I would email him like my reviews, and he would play like, and he told me, I remember him telling me like, you're a really good writer. And I was like, I am. I had no idea. So it turned into this. I started just doing a Pittsburgh blog, like a Pittsburgh sports-based blog called The Keystone Statement. And I always kind of want to bring it back in a lot of ways, where it's just
what is that about? What was that about at that time?
Sure. So I would just mainly focus on sports. So Penguins, Pirates. I'm not a Steelers fan, but I would cover some of the Steelers.
I think what are you? You are.
I'm a Jets fan.
That's what I'd seen some pictures. Yeah.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that, as long as you're, because you had some ups and downs for many, many decades. I mean,
now too.
But that's what I love about fans of. I don't know how people get to like other teams when they live in the area, but if they know the history and they know what's going on, I'm all cool with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, and I started in '98 as a Jets fan because of Vinny Testaverde, and they had the old the Jets uniforms at that point where it was like Joe Namath style. My dad was a Joe Namath fan, so that was another.
Oh well, that's where kind of some of it probably yeah.
So it all kind of launched off from there, and but anywho, so I was doing that, and it's kind of it was catching traction. And me and Marcus, we actually did like a podcast where it was just called the Keystone Cast, where we just talk about, and we had another friend, Zach Gagne, that was a part of it too. And we just BS about Pittsburgh stuff and like just kind of make fun of each other, bust each other's balls, and like just have a good time and stuff. And it was kind of a little bit catching fire in the local area. People were kind of getting aware of it. But then Zach ended up moving back to Ridgeway, PA, where we're all from. And then Marcus didn't find the incentive to kind of continue doing it and stuff like that. So we kind of just broke it off. And then my one buddy, Mike Shannon, ended up being like, he's like, you should try to get paid for doing what you're doing, all this work you're putting in. And I was like, I guess that's a good point. I started looking around, and sure enough, I saw WrestleZone was like hiring people or looking for volunteers, to be honest.
Okay.
And so, boom, I reached out, and it ended up being Nick Houseman, who does House of Wrestling now. He was running the thing there, and I just volunteered. Again, I volunteered. I did ROH coverage when they had the show on a weekly basis. And then WrestleMania, whatever it was in New Orleans, I was there as a fan. And I remember riding on back from New Orleans and seeing the email like, hey, we're hiring. Are you interested in a paid position? I was like, yep. And kind of went from there. So I did that while I was working at Whole Foods full time. And I did that for like 4 years.
So when you were working at your regular job, and you had to do write stuff for the for the side hustle you were doing, was
Yeah,
it was it every day that you were doing something?
Basically, yeah. So I would work. I would do at least 8 articles, I think, a day for WrestleZone,
Wow.
and it was Monday through Friday. So I would get out of work usually. I can't remember. I think how it started is I would write in the mornings, and then at 2 p.m. I would go and work at Whole Foods from 2 p.m. to 10. And then that kind of changed around where I would work morning. I switched them.
Right.
Then,
So when you did that writing, it was you like doing, if a hot topic come up in wrestling, say after work, and you found out about it, you're writing pretty much every day, all the time then.
yeah. So one of my first articles I did, it's pretty crazy, Bubba. It was like, maybe I was like 2 weeks into it or like a week into it, and April 2018, and like on my clock is when Bruno passed away, and I was like in Pittsburgh, like I was at the Starbucks in Bloomfield, and like my heart sunk because like I grew up like a Bruno fan too, like in the household and everything like that. And it was, I wrote that article for WrestleZone, and it was like, holy smokes. And so, it was wild. And so, so anytime something would break, I'd have to write about it or figure it out. And ultimately it kind of turned into some other opportunities where Nick ended up leaving WrestleZone, and then Bill Pritchard took over as editor, who's still the editor there. And I remember the one time he was like, it was AEW was starting to launch, and it was, he was like, would you be up for going to Vegas for AEW's ticket announcement party? I was like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Never been to Vegas. Never I'd never traveled I was like, sign me up. I'll do it.
Was it like The Hangover?
Yeah. Like The Hangover. It didn't get that. I'm trying to think if I got hammered at it was cold.
I'd be like Chris Farley, man, out there. I'd be one day it would do me good in Vegas, and I got to leave or something.
Yeah, right.
Crazy shit's gonna happen. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, but it was so cool, and it was such a neat experience to be on the forefront of all that and seeing like the development and what was to come potentially for all that with AEW, and it was neat. And then from then, I was like, you know what, I should really make an effort to try to travel and do this stuff more and kind of get my network and like get these experiences and stuff like that. And
so when did it open up a lot more when you went out to Vegas? Did the doors just say, here, Dom, here you go, Dominic, here you go?
It really launched me. It motivated me to do that more and stuff like that, because like here I am in the scrum, like right there at the forefront of it, where they're all announcing Cody's out there and the Bucks come out, Kenny comes out, they announce who else is there, like who's going to be appearing for AEW. And then I remember interacting with a lot of the guys too, a young like MJF at the time and stuff like that, and being like, wow, okay. But the real big launching point too, I believe, was StarCast 3. Yes, StarCast 3. So I reached out to Conrad Thompson, and I was like, hey, would you want to do an interview? And he was like, yeah, man, totally. And
see, you got connections. I can't get him. I try to talk to him for my home mortgage, and I never got a call back.
Oh, really?
You got connections.
So he ended up, so like I didn't know him. I just knew him from his podcast and stuff like that. And I don't exactly know how I made that connection or got a hold of him, but he was like, yeah. And so I got there early. I got there at the Chicago early, where they were having the event. And here I'm just sitting here with them and stuff like that. And like, I'm just interviewing them. And afterwards I'm done. And I was like, well, I don't know what the hell to do next. And so I'm like, just kind of like walking around the area, the whole venue. It's like a Hyatt hotel. And here comes Tony Schiavone walking not barefoot, but maybe in his socks, like down the hallway. He's like, hey, you looking for Conrad? And I wasn't really looking for Conrad, but I was like, yeah, I guess so. And he was like, oh, he's just in that like closet over there, like it's like a green room, quote unquote. And I was like, okay. And so I walk over and I open the door, and there's Conrad sitting there. I was like, hey guys. And I was like, you mind if I hang out in there? And they were like, sure, go ahead. And so I like squatted in there and like was just like busting balls in him with everybody. And then I made that connection with Conrad. And then that's kind of how really things also started getting moving a little bit too, as I made the connection with Conrad. And he's been such a big help throughout like my whole process of this thing. And, but it's just a matter of like getting yourself out there and putting yourself out there and doing interviews and looking for those opportunities. And I was trying to think outside the box for interviews when it comes to stuff like, oh, who could I try to get that nobody's ever interviewed? Like I was thinking like, hey, George Kittle just showed up on SmackDown. I'll try to reach out to the 49ers and see if I can get an interview. I got an interview with him. It was like, so it was just like certain opportunities like that, where it's just like, don't rule anything out and just kind of keep hustling and getting your.
How do you do it when you try to get interviews off of people? Because when I try it, maybe I do it like maybe I think that I'm like really ridiculously over the top. So how would you do it to try to get? Because I mean, I try to get people from all walks of life when I do these one-on-one interviews, and sometimes it's hard. Like people don't want to be bothered, you know.
Well, here's the thing too: is like I would get self-conscious because I would send like out one email. And then if I don't hear back, I'm like, oh, they don't like me, or I don't, or they don't want to hear, they're annoyed with me or whatever. And you got to kind of get that out of your head. Like maybe they are, maybe they don't give a crap about you, or maybe they just didn't look, or maybe it's like they got a lot of other crap to do. And so it's just like kind of touching base and going. And I think having the WrestleZone thing under my name tag and stuff like that would kind of be a good into
the credentials that you have mean something. You know what I mean? So it's not like you know, like for me, like, who the hell's Bubba Brewer and Triple B Experience? You know what I mean? Like I try, you know what I mean? But you have the credentials because you earned it and you did what you did, and that's awesome. And you're respected in that community, so that helps out too.
Yeah, it's like you just kind of build a little bit of a background with it too, and just kind of like. It is tough though. It's tough. Like, yeah, I put the effort in, but a lot of it can be kind of luck too, in a lot of ways too. It's like circumstantial and things. And sure, I put myself in certain circumstances for that to happen, but also it just, there is that matter of life working out kind of thing aspect of it too.
Well, you got to think positive. That's how I do it. And
yeah,
I mean, I just like doing it. And if 2 people listen or 2 million people listen, it's the same. You're getting the same person. You know what I mean? But it's very hard, and you have to keep doing it daily. So your schedule and your routine has to be, you probably got a planner that's like thicker than like an encyclopedia.
Dude, that's the thing is like, I literally just this new year, I bought like a $30 planner because I'm so disorganized and like, I never like write stuff down and I need to write stuff down. And it's just like, I'm trying to make a habit of doing that where it's just like get in my, cause like my head's all over the place. I'll have like one thing I have to do. I'll have another thing I got to do. And it's so much other stuff on top of it too, where it's just like, did I do this? And then I totally forgot. I was like, oh my God, I got to do this too. So it's like, it does it. There's a lot of plates spinning sometimes and it's overwhelming, but it can be rewarding.
So when you're doing these, since now you're doing these podcasts now again, how many podcasts are you producing and hosting? Are you producing like so many and then you're hosting other ones? Do you have like a smorgasbord of podcasting?
Sure. My schedule has thankfully kind of lightened in a bittersweet kind of way. Like Kurt Angle's show just ended, so I was doing YouTube for that.
Okay.
So I'd strictly make the YouTube graphics and post the clip on there.
So the graphics, when you had the job doing the graphic stuff years ago, has helped you out doing. Okay.
Oh yeah, like it's definitely
that's good to have.
It's helped me in a lot of ways. Like if I need to make something or do something for like anything you see with RVD, the one of a kind stuff, I made it. Like that's all my design, like logo, everything like that. And but yeah, like so I produce. So right now I produce just Road Dog, I believe. I think that's the only one. Yes, that's the only one is the Road Dog. So you didn't know.
Because Angle's is it season done, or is he not doing it no more?
He's not doing it no more on a weekly basis. I'm not sure what his game plan is moving forward, but I've been fortunate enough that I've gone and filmed him like at events and stuff like that. He's hired me to go film him for certain things.
Okay, because I think sometimes the guys, the wrestlers get burned out doing these podcasts.
Oh yeah. I think so too. And it's like, because you're telling these stories and things like that. And then on top of it, it's like, wrestlers are all over the place. Like they've made a career out of like going traveling and doing all this stuff. And like, sometimes if you get that opportunity to have some downtime or like an escape from it all, you might want that. And if it's monetarily for some reason for somebody not working out or it doesn't fit their schedule, fit their needs, then sometimes they got to think what's the point of doing it sometimes, Yeah. But it helps you stay relevant though. And keeps them in the news cycle.
Well, if the stories and the experiences that they're telling, intertwine old fans and get new fans, because there's so many. I bet there's a million podcasts out there of wrestling and just all genres of all forms of entertainment. I mean, so you produce Road Dogs.
Produce Road Dogs.
Okay.
Then I do YouTube for Arn Anderson. So I do like what I did for Angle, I do for Arn. So I put
is
up.
Arn's still doing his, right?
Arn's still doing his. Yep. So
okay.
Like, yeah. So on a weekly basis, I'll get his clips and stuff. And then, so then I host One of a Kind with RVD.
Right.
And then, yeah, now Gagne and Magnum. And we're actually doing a rebranding here. It's going to be called Straight Talk with the Boss now. Gagne, Magnum TA and Gagne and Greg Gagne. So that'll be up next.
How did you get to do like the One of a Kind with RVD? How did that come about?
Yeah. So at some point, I don't know how, but RVD was promoting his Headstrong documentary at the time. So the concussion documentary he did. And there was somehow interview opportunities. I don't know. Maybe I reached out to something or I had information. So I touched base and I was like, hey, can I interview RVD for Headstrong? And they were like, yeah. And so I got like RVD's number for it. And literally like on a break at Whole Foods, I like went into the warehouse. The warehouse and I interviewed him over the phone for like 20 minutes, like in just like this office closet, basically. And like talked to him for like 20 minutes. So then I just always had his number after that. And I would never give it to anybody or nothing like that.
Sure. Yeah. I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then so I just had it. And so I would, at that point, after I went to Vegas with AEW, I always wanted to go to Vegas. So I'd find myself in Vegas.
Don't blame it.
Yeah. And so I found myself in Vegas from time to time. And so Rob lives there. And so I knew he liked the mob and all that mafia history. So I remember texting him about that, staying in like communication with him.
Right.
Later on, it turns out Marcus started a podcast with Jake. He took over the Jake Roberts podcast after DDP left. And then he started a podcast with Ted DiBiase. And so then who his first wrestling figure was, oddly enough. And so then he ended up, he called me and he's like, hey, this guy that manages Ted wants to do more maybe podcasts with some wrestlers and stuff like that. Is there any names you want to maybe be interested in? I was like, hi, how about RVD? If he's got him there, and he's like, yeah, I could check. And I was like, okay. And then after I got off the phone with him, I was like, wait a second, I got RVD's number. I was like, why don't I just
call him,
make a pitch to him?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I sent him a text. I was like, hey, Rob, you probably don't remember me, but Dominic DeAngelo, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure you get this all the time. Have you thought about maybe doing a podcast? Here's my idea. I'll make it light for you. No pressure, whatever. And like Rob kind of like he responded. Rob always was very great at responding. Even probably he didn't know who the fuck I was or anything like that.
Oh, fucking yeah, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. So he was like, yeah, I'm interested in hearing. He's like, let me hear about it. So I made the pitch, and sure enough, that's how it all kind of launched out. And we've been doing it since May, I believe. So
since May of last year.
May of last year.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I've seen some clips. I've seen some stuff. I heard some stuff, and then Magnum and that's two. That podcast has two different philosophical views, I think, on that podcast. Do you think
it's crazy? Like you think about Greg Gagne, and then you think about Magnum TA, and you're like, how the heck did these two meet? Like, because it's like you have AWA, you have NWA, but their paths never crossed. Like they were never. And here it was like the wrestling figure business basically brought them together, like Power Town Wrestling. So they're high quality.
Oh, those good figures that they have. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So that's what really brought them together. And then they wanted to do a podcast, and it was through the same manager that Ted DiBiase has. And so they were like, hey, would you be interested in hosting? And I was like, yeah. And like the thing is like I'm a fringe. I like AWA. Like I grew to like AWA
back in the day, the Road
Warriors, but I didn't know crap about it. Like kid,
Well, on this side of in Pennsylvania, it wasn't. You know what I mean? You had to get it on ESPN, and it was the demise of AWA. It wasn't the Nick Bockwinkel, Hogan, the good stuff. Ventura, East-West connect. It wasn't that kind of stuff.
None of that.
We were getting the scrap heap.
Colonel De Beers. You're getting Colonel De Beers.
Scrap. Yeah, the scrap heap in AWA at ESPN Showtime, whatever that was at 12
Right.
o'clock
And
night.
so like I didn't know. I mean, later on, I grew to love like somebody like a Nick Bockwinkel and stuff like that. And but still, there's a lot I'm pretty positive I'm not aware of with AWA. And then obviously Magnum comes from the Dusty background, and I just thought Magnum looked cool. like
Magnum when I was a kid and I saw
Yeah.
Magnum live on TV, his belly to suplex with that finisher was phenomenal. I mean, God just must have looked away that time. I mean, God bless him. He survived that crash, but he would have been the world champion. And
Oh, no doubt about it. And
I mean, he had everything. He
Yeah.
had everything.
And if you have Dusty's backing, that means you're good material right there, And so yeah, it's like it ended up working out. And Greg's such a nice dude, and same with Magnum. And they follow the product, they follow the modern product. And it's like you get there.
Well, that's good. That's good too, because
yeah,
you guys had a little discussion this past week, and then that topic is just
it's on fire.
It's bad. I mean,
it's crazy. It's like you think about all that stuff, and it's such a muddy situation, and it's getting even muddier. And
but those two, when they did that on your show,
Mhm.
they had a professional take on it from each part, and they did a phenomenal job about it.
Right, right. And it's like, and I was telling you this off air too. It's like, as a journalist, and I know, and a lot of the times too, I'm like, all right, I write about wrestling. It's like, do I call myself a journalist? Is that kind of thing? And it's just like, I do want to be a professional about this stuff, in a way, because I mean, some of those media scrums, and I've said this before on podcasts too, and I have some great colleagues in the business. I do. But there's also a lot of fanboys and a lot of guys that get in there and they're wearing wrestling T-shirts and they're just there. And it's just like,
not professional.
Not professional. You know what I mean? And it's just like, we get all the crap we rightfully deserve sometimes as wrestling journalists. Like these scrums can be a joke. They can be. Neither of these promotions have to do them. They have no obligation to do it whatsoever.
And they just started doing this stuff a couple years. They never did it like years ago.
Oh no! And if they did it, it was all kayfabe. Like you had fake journalists in there, just taking notes and asking, "Hey, what did you think about your feud with Vader?" It's like,
you're absolutely right.
So there is that kind of that thing to it. So it's like, yes, I want to bring kind of some reputation to it, some good reputation. And also it's just like, yeah, but asking those kind of questions can be tough. And it's, if you're Triple H or if you're anybody in, that position, the expectation is you would like to think that they would know that that type of question has to be asked. Right. And from a journalistic
but who wants to be the first person to ask question like that?
But and it's like nobody I think wants to and and even in my head I'm thinking dude, if I have to ask it, I guess I gotta ask it, it's just gonna be that part of it. It's just yeah, but you have to, that's the kind of stuff. And even if you get a no comment, that's what you still gotta ask it. It's but what I was telling you is I don't even know if I was going to get the opportunity to ask Triple H, Cody, whoever, because everybody's going to be raising their hands for that. And so, and I was like, Bailey, I had a good question for Bailey that I wanted to ask because I love Dusty Rhodes. And I was just I'll keep raising my hand. And if it happens, it happens. And so be it. That's what happened. And I knew I probably wasn't going to get another question in. So, but yeah, it's you have to
be like a surgeon, and you have to have precision, and you have to ask. Like a couple weeks ago when that reporter asked Mike Tomlin, about, and he walked off. That wasn't I was like, hey, she had the guts to do it. But a lot of people in the Pittsburgh media is wrong time to ask that question.
That's what I said. So it's funny because in a group text with my buddies, I was just did you see Tomlin walked off on that? And I was like, the journalist did nothing wrong. She had to ask that question. That's a make sense question. And even one of my buddies said that too. He was, and he's an Eagles fan of all things. And he was it's not the right time to ask. And I was Yeah, it kind of is, because it's just like, I understand emotions run high and things like that, but you're the head coach. If something gets asked like that, it's like, you should just be like, even if you're just like, I don't want to answer that stuff, or even if you're even kind of rude to that person, I think that's more reputable than just walking away.
Right. Well, and I'm a diehard Steeler fan, and he should have stood his ground and it's like, look, not going to answer this question right now because we just lost to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah,
Why
that's
don't
all you gotta say.
Talk to me Tuesday, and I'll be more than happy to answer it.
Done. And that's the thing right too. There. In your head, you're like, okay, I have this question I want to ask maybe Triple H or something like that. And if I ask him this, I'm probably just going to get a no comment or a non-answer. And heck, no offense to Tony Khan, and I love being at those things and stuff like that.
What's in his coffee?
How often are you going to get? I've asked a couple questions to him, like when it comes to stuff, and it's just like, he gives you an answer sometimes, but there's also just a whole lot of like, hey, this show was great. Great. You know?
Battery's like, hey, Dominic, I'm going to make a major announcement this Wednesday. Today too. Yeah. Like every week it's the same thing. Like, I don't know if he got vodka in his coffee or other stuff. Like, I just don't know.
It's so I was a big AEW advocate. I'm still an advocate.
I was too at one time, but it's starting to just their booking and the way they handle some of their talent right now makes me mad, because some of the people aren't getting, like, I mean, look at Andrade, boom, gone. Like, stuff like that irritates me.
You look at this stuff too. It's like, I remember like Cody showing up at WrestleMania, and when he did that, I was like, this is a gut punch to AEW. It's just like, the wind has to be knocked out of him. And I honestly think that moment, they haven't really recovered from that. And then
I don't think so either. And then look at what happened at Rumble. Look what happened at Rumble.
And then Punk going there did seem like, hey, this is a good shot across the bow or whatever it is. And like, then you like thought they had a chance and they were moving forward and stuff like that. But then you look at it, and I remember Marcus and I, we did a podcast, WrestleZone. It was called Two Dynamite Dudes, and it was all focused on AEW, and we would talk about AEW each week and each out, and the possibilities. Oh, what if they signed Samoa Joe? Or hey, what if they signed Cesaro? Or what do you think about this? What do you think about, a lot of fun, a lot of good possibilities going on. And but then you get those guys get there. And look at what happens to Cesaro. He's almost an afterthought now.
It's terrible. I think he's one of the greatest wrestlers going today. Samoa Joe, I have the utmost praise for him, but it just seems like they just are missing the beat, because they get these WWE casts off when they get released, and they don't make the stars. Like, the only star right now they're making besides MJF is Timeless Tony Storm. And that I don't know what. They don't have maybe the people in the back to help them out. I mean, we talk about stuff all the time on my podcast, and it just boggles my mind.
Here's the issue too, is like, you go in and you think you have all these stars, you have all these names signed, but it's just like, okay, we'll focus on them 1 week, and then you won't see them for several weeks in a certain position. And then it's just like, there's no follow-up. How am I supposed to follow these things when I know nothing matters when it comes to it? Like, I could try to get invested into Claudio Castagnoli, but I know I'm not going to be satisfied at the end of the day when it comes to it, because there's no completion to certain aspects. Like, Samoa Joe's doing a great job as champion right now. Mm-hmm. And like, I thought what he's been doing on the stick and establishing himself as a champion and making him feel that way is like, okay, you're on the right track. But like, so much of this is like, I don't want to say it's too little too late, but they really did lose a whole lot of momentum, where it's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to get that kind of momentum back. Like, it's you think about it, like, it's like, okay, they seem like the hot fire company, and now they're a clear cut second place.
Yeah. Wednesday nights used to be, you didn't want to miss AEW, but now it's like, it's an afterthought, really. Like, this past Wednesday was the first time I actually watched it in months, because I usually do my podcast on Wednesday and have you know what I mean? But it's just, and I review it on YouTube, but it's not like it was like Ring of Honor, Tony bought that, and then all these wrestlers, and we could spend hours and hours and hours debating what we want to see. I just want to see wrestling with some good storylines and some great angles. That's all. Like,
you focus on the stars, the certain stars. You don't have to necessarily cut. The roster is so big, and it's cool that Tony's giving everybody jobs. Like,
yeah,
I'm never awesome. Gonna like say anything to that effect where it's like, hey, these people should not be getting paid for what they're doing. But
Right,
it's like,
right.
as a wrestling television product, you have to really hone in on who you want to hone in on and stay consistent and stay steady on it. And instead of jumping from here to there and forgetting about somebody, like, hey, let's make Wardlow really hot right now and get behind him. And then all of a sudden, screw him. He's done.
Yeah.
We had him with Arn Anderson, and now he's not there. Arn's not there. Wardlow's gone. Now he's back. And it's just like, you can only do that so much. And it's just,
and Jericho is like up and down and everywhere, and he's doing this with Sammy Guevara, and it's just, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then the other, it's just, and then you got other people that, well, the injuries too, with Adam Cole's injury, you know, Britt's injuries have hurt that company too, but also injuries have hurt the WWE. I mean, CM Punk has the worst luck known to mankind. It's unreal. Like, and I'm not a big Punk fan, but I respect him and doing what he's doing, but that's just bad luck.
It is. It's like, you know, it's upsetting too, because it's like, oh man, like, think about the roller coaster Punk's been on, and like, you know, and you can say part of it's his fault, part of it's AEW's fault, whatever it may be, whoever it is, but it's like he goes, you know, you think about, okay, Punk is back in wrestling in AEW, and it's like, okay, feeling good, boom, breaks his foot, and like, all right, he's wrestling at All Out, and he's gonna win the title, and he does win the title. But he tears his tricep, and then he has this huge moment at the press conference that is historic and everything like that.
Yeah.
And
was you there? Was you there when all that?
I was.
Oh my God.
I was wearing a Penguin shirt, and so he ended up, after he ranted about it.
I think he spoke about your Penn shirt.
He did. He was like. And he's like, and man, fuck the Pittsburgh Penguins. He like looked at me, and I was like, what about Sidney Crosby? And he's like, fuck Sidney Crosby, fuck Malkin, fuck Lemieux. And then as he's getting up, he's like, hey, and fuck Ron Francis. How about that?
Hey, we're hey, that everybody he said is a Hall of Famer. You know,
that's it. I mean? That's champions, it. You know,
champions.
My follow-up, I was hoping he was going to be at the Rumble press conference, because my follow-up was going to be like, I was going to ask him a legitimate question, but then I'd be like, and last time we were together, you trashed a lot of people. One of those, and then I was going to tell him who all trashed, and I was like, what are your thoughts on Yammer Yager? And get his opinion on him at least. And then,
you don't. Well, Lemieux. I mean, you can't. You know. I mean, you can't. Lemieux walks on water, man. You don't bash Lemieux, like,
right?
Yeah. So anytime that you ever wrote about a situation in the wrestling, did anybody ever contact you and say, hey, Dominic, hey, I didn't like and I didn't appreciate how you wrote that, or something? Did that ever happen?
No, there was a moment where I wrote, when I was with WrestleZone, that I wrote something maybe that was not, I don't know. I wrote something about Robert Stone now in NXT. Robbie E or Robbie E at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There was something. I can't remember what it was, but I knew he wasn't upset with me. He was like, it ended up being, but like, it was just a discrepancy that kind of happened, and I corrected it, or something that went with it, you know, basically. But that's kind of been it. I never really I haven't gotten any crap for what it is. And
so you're well respected in the community of podcasting and wrestling journalism. Like, I respect you for doing what you do, because I mean, you're doing shows and you're doing them weekly. Your podcast shows are weekly and almost an hour show.
Yeah.
You do an hour all the time. You don't go over.
So Gagne and Magnum, we try to keep to an hour. Rob and I, we sometimes go 2 hours. Like,
woo!
We go live on his YouTube channel, like every once a week now. That's kind of the format we switched to.
And anything goes on that 2 hours, huh?
Anything goes. And then the cool thing about Rob is he'll do like a philosophical end to close it all out, his RVDology, where he gives you advice, and it's super cool. It's like, holy crap, I didn't think about it in that light. And it's just like something to carry without you throughout your like week, and then you can adapt it into your life if you're interested in doing it. And he'll just some good philosophical stuff that he ends it on, and it's a really cool added element to the show that I really enjoy hearing, and I've actually like kind of like taken from. I was like, that's a great point, Rob. I gotta look into that.
Yeah, he looked great Wednesday against Swerve.
Oh, he did. Awesome. He did.
Yeah. Right. And you knew that was coming, right? You knew that was coming?
I had a bit of a heads up on that.
Yeah, I figured you did. But that's okay too. I mean, and that's good. So, like, you have these two shows. Do you have any other shows that you're going to be a host for another podcast to be like a triple host, or you're doing a lot of producing? So you're actually busy mostly doing the podcasting and the producing and doing graphics and stuff like that. So you're consumed with all this stuff, correct?
Correct. So I do all the podcasting stuff, and then I do socials. So I do socials for
That's the hard part, putting the stuff out social and doing that. That's
getting that stuff. So like Kevin Nash, I do his social media for like the podcast.
wow.
And then
Okay.
Road Dog. So like since I'm the producer of Road Dog, I also do socials for Road Dog. And then any hustle when it comes to Gagne. See, I gotta get better at doing socials for Gagne and Magnum, but I do it for Rob. Like when it comes to like promoting the podcast.
You got 5. I think that's 5. I'm counting on my hand. 1, 2, 3, 4,
5. I used to do Angle. I don't do Angle anymore. MLW.
But if Angle called you up and said, "Hey Dominic, I got something for you. You know, hey, we're gonna do something in Pittsburgh." You're boom, it's right there.
Yeah.
And if you ever wanted to get back into the podcasting world, if you had more stories to tell, or
absolutely, I would do anything like with Kurt. Kurt's such a great person to work for. He's such a pro. He's like, he just handles things, and like, he's just all about it. He's
first time I met him, we did an APWF show, and I introduced myself as Kurt Angle, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Kurt Angle," and I was in the front seat of my car, and I'm like, "Oh my god," he's like, look at this fucking idiot," you know what I mean? Like,
dude, I've done that stuff a lot too.
I mean, and I just told the guys in the back seat, I'm like, "Look, we're picking up Kurt Angle for the show, you know what I mean? Let's act professional, you know, and this and that." And I got his bags, got him in, and I'm like, "Hi, Bubba, I'm Kurt Angle." That's how I introduced him. Like, what the hell? It was, and the guys were like, "Geez, Bubba, you're the one telling us to act professional, and you act like a, a mark, an ultramaroon." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." Sometimes it's a Freudian slip. Yeah. So you got that. Now, do you have anything in the you probably are so busy, there's probably not enough. You probably can't take any more on because you don't want to get overwhelmed. I'm sure, because it is hard.
I definitely got to balance some stuff out. I know, and I'm hoping the planner will ultimately help me with that. We'll see. But like, I have some like stuff planned. I don't. There's something daily news. I kind of want to do.
Okay. So awesome, sweet.
That might be coming down the pipeline here. Okay. I might be along the ride for something that Marcus has planned too, so we'll see how that goes.
I got him on the docket too.
He's in the early stages, but Marcus has really taken himself to a new level. I honestly, and I know I'm biased because I'm his brother and stuff like that, but like the way
you guys got great stuff. I listen to your guys' stuff in the gym, so I mean,
awesome,
I'm good, yeah. So I mean. And I know you're a workout fiend too. So
I'm getting my balls busted quite a bit for posting selfies online and stuff like that.
Hey, who cares, man? It is what it is, man. It's
right.
If you're positive and you're bringing positivity to everybody, F everybody else. You know,
and I told this with Marcus, because Marcus is super humble and doesn't want to come off as like, so self-promoting and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, to an extent, you have to promote yourself. Or nobody else will promote you. Like, nobody gives a crap about you or me or anybody except you. You do. So there comes that aspect where it's like you almost have to, like, as sometimes as cringe as it feels to do some stuff, I'm like, all right, I'll do it and like put myself out there, kind of thing. And in the grand scheme of it all, nobody gives a shit. So I feel it's just like you just do it for you, and like ultimately like. You just hope it keeps traction and stuff like that. And stay, and like to what you said, Bubba, it's like, stay positive about yourself. And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, well, you guys, I mean, it's you guys have a niche, you know what I mean? So you have a good rapport in the wrestling community. You guys both probably now, when you guys go to, let's say, local Western Pennsylvania shows, did they give you guys respect that you guys deserve? Or are they just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be an ass, but I know the politics in Western Pennsylvania wrestling, indie wrestling, there's a lot of politics. But I mean, anybody that's doing, like, for me, it's just my philosophy. If anybody's doing podcasting and doing stuff, you know what I mean? And you give them a little carte blanche, you know what I mean? Like, hey, thanks guys for coming. And hey, how's it going? Everything cool? Stuff like that.
Yeah, so Marcus and I haven't really. The only thing we really go to, and I go to more than he does, is KSWA, where I met you at again.
Yeah, very, very good independent. They've been doing it for decades.
Oh yeah.
I like I was walking in and Sean Patrick come up to me and shook my hand, and
he's a good dude.
yeah, the respect that you get in the wrestling business, you'll never get that respect in any other place, like jobs. Like I tell where I work, I tell, hey guys, out in the real world, I might be respected here. I'm a motherfucker, but hey, people respect people out in the real world, and in the wrestling world, there is a lot of respect. I respect a lot of people in this business because it's a hard business to do.
It is, and like to keep steady on it, and to like, you know, and like sometimes too, it's like, especially at indie show, if you go there and like the crowd's not into it, or there's other stuff that's going on, you have to like motivate yourself and to get that kind. And that goes with anything too. Like when I was doing theater and stuff like that, and we've had like weak ass crowds or whatever, and it's just like, you know, you got to motivate yourself to get into that position and be like, well, okay, well, at the very minimum, this is almost like batting practice where I'm just getting some reps in. You know, kind of thing like that.
Right. Well, you always got to try to win a title at every time you do. Every time you go out, you got to try to win the title.
You got to try to win the title.
Yeah.
What are you there for? If you're not gonna,
yeah. Right? No dark matches. You got to try to win the title. You
got to try to win it. Right. That's it. That's it. Yeah. No, it's like I never really get like, I don't think people know me from Sunday a lot of times, but like Trapper Tom, the announcer for KSW.
Good guy. Yes. Yeah.
He surprised me. He like announced like me there, like wrestling journalist Dominic DeAngelo is there starting a podcast with Magnum TA and Greg Gagne. And I was like, I did not expect that. So I was super flattered about that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like,
but that's what I mean though about the respect, because they, you know what I mean? Like you're doing, like there's nobody in Western Pennsylvania doing what you and your brother are doing. Nobody. I mean, I'm a podcaster. I can't get anybody to come on and do a weekly show. You know what I mean? I would try, and I do stuff on my own, but I'm okay with that. But you guys are doing stuff that is super huge, and you're bringing stories from the past, and you have legends of the wrestling business that whoever would have thought, you know, when you were probably 15 years old or a college student, that like, oh my God, I'm doing a show with RVD.
Right. No, it's like I grew up a fan of Rob's and like just like always liked him and things like that. And it's just like, yeah, you don't really consider that and stuff like that. But now it's just like there's that aspect too where you got to take almost I like to think I'm always a fan, but it's also like you got to take the fan out of it and just be like, okay, you know, it's another person, and I like what he's done, and I have a really good time interacting with somebody like Rob or like Kevin Nash or whoever it may be, and Road Dogg. Like Road Dogg's one of the nicest people I've ever interacted with in all of wrestling, and he gets his balls busted so big on social media sometimes where it's just like people.
Well, social media is bad for
perception
it's a cesspool of negativity,
isn't it? It's so negative. It's so negative, and like Road Dogg's such a nice dude, and it's just like. It's funny. He's such a funny guy, and but yeah, it's just like it's pretty neat. It's cool to be a part of this, and like there'll be some moments like Marcus and I, we were at Ric Flair's last match helping out and everything like that, and behind the scenes, and we're like, dude, we're sitting at like the production table and all this kind of stuff. It's pretty. You never would have considered that. Like if you're like,
you got to get hey, pinch me, Marcus. Pinch me. I'll pinch you because it's a moment that no one else would ever fan him. I mean, that's just how it is. Sometimes, you know, you got to take the, you got to drive the car and you got to get to the destination. And if the destination is truly epic, it has shown for both you guys. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah. It's been fun, Bubba. And it's like, there's just cool aspects of it. And it's neat. I was so elated to see you there at KSWA because it's
Thank you. Well,
it was like
I don't do too much anymore. I don't get out much anymore. I like to do more. I mean, I just like to see these young guys and the superstars of tomorrow. Like I'm a huge, big time Bill Collier fan. I think Bill's
he's
the
great.
Greatest.
Yeah.
I just think he's great, and I just don't get to see enough of the guys. And I miss the camaraderie of the locker room sometimes. Being an old head, I can never do it again. But I just miss the flair of the independence. I mean, I like the big shows too, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's just you know, it's once it's in your blood, it's like the mafia. Once you're in, once you try to get out, you come back in, you can't
come back in, you can't escape it.
No. But no, I appreciate, I mean, everything you guys do. You're busting busting, stuff up. You're doing stuff. You're moving and grooving. You're going to Rumbles. You're going to be going to Mania. You're going to be, you're doing what you need to do. And I commend you and your brother. You guys are doing stuff that I admire, because you guys are at that level of journalism and podcasting, because you're doing stuff with the guys at the names and doing the shows and producing. Like, that's hard work.
Yeah, I mean, like it is. It's tough to balance it sometimes, and it's like to preparation for it. Like Marcus is so much more like as disorganized as I am. Marcus is way more organized than I am. Is like he's got everything like post-it notes and everything ready to go. His notes are all covered. Like when it comes to like Ted or Jake or things like that. When it comes to, I just do like bullet points when it comes to like stuff where it's like, this is stuff I want to talk about. I'll get this to cover this.
I'll work it in somewhere, angle it, like,
that kind of aspect. So it's like very different. So it's like, it's crazy. Like, and Marcus made a lot of, like, when you get to talk to him, he's made a lot of himself where it's just like, he got this opportunity through ad-free shows to like do socials and stuff like that. And that's really how he started out. But then he took everything else by the horns and kind of made his own opportunities. Yeah. And so,
that's what you gotta do, I think, in this podcasting stuff is very, very, very hard. And I don't know how I do it. And I'm just, it's just, like I said, 2 people, 2 million, 2,000, it doesn't matter. It's, you guys are probably doing the same thing. Your persona is your persona in and out. That's
right.
I mean, it's true. That's how I look at it,
Yeah. And it's like, and what you said earlier too, it's just all about consistency. There's so many people that, they'll do podcasts, they'll write, they'll jump into it maybe for a couple weeks. And it's just like anything, like it's like working out, or it's like, trying to get in the rhythm of something. But if you just keep at it, and you have a passion for it, and you find your niche and you find your abilities of what your strengths, and you show them to people, that'll start coming through. Like, and it's just like, and confidence and positivity, I think, is a huge aspect of it. It's a very huge aspect. If you're not positive, then
nobody wants to hang out with any negative nilly. I mean, I could bitch and complain about stuff because I know I can do it better the right way. That's what irritates me sometimes.
Right.
But speaking of, I got some questions here.
Okay. Yeah.
So, before, like, what kind of hobbies? This is not a question, but I wanted to get this in. What kind of hobbies do you do besides the podcasting and doing your work? What hobbies do you like to do outside of what you've been doing, what we've been talking about?
So, I mean, like, recently, like, I've just been working out a lot, and that's been like a big aspect of me. Like, I got out of a relationship last February, I think it was. And then like, I kind of just needed something else to do, and to to what you were saying, stay positive about things and things like that, and feel positive about, what I was doing and where my life was potentially going and certain things like that. And so I was like, I want to just get in shape and really commit myself to that. So like, that's been a big hobby of mine, and like getting into boxing and just
I take my buddy owns a boxing thing in Indiana, and I tell you what, it's a good stress reliever.
That's it.
It's great.
Fun. It's like, I'm not good at it whatsoever.
Me neither.
My punches are probably weak as hell. Like, but it's like, it's fun, and it's like, it's therapeutic. And I'm going to be taking a class next week, I think, too, like, and doing that kind of thing. So,
awesome. Because when you work out, it just makes you feel better.
Oh yeah. And it's just like, you feel good. And that's part of it. And you always got to think about it from a mental aspect, is like, what have you done today? Have you slept well enough? Have you eaten? Have you drank water? Have you worked out? Have you interacted with people? If you're like, and if you have mental stuff or whatever, have you taken medication or you're medicated? Like, you factor all that stuff in. And if one of those is off, then that's probably a reason maybe you're not feeling your best and stuff like that too. And
that's good. Like, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
And so having that kind of mentality too, and believe you me, there's a lot of those I miss out on sometimes, but it's good to factor in. And so
right.
And the exercise is a big aspect of that. So I've been doing that a lot.
What else too? What else?
Hobby wise, so like nothing. I used to be into video games, and I still play them, but I don't play them as often anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to read. I have all these books behind me and like wrestling books and stuff.
Okay.
And like 95% of them I haven't read. They're just there.
Yeah, I feel you. I understand.
The Terry Funk one here I read though. That's one of my favorites.
I was in a locker room with him real quick, and I tell you what, I shut my mouth and just listened to him and Shane Douglas talk about ECW days, and I was like a sponge. Like it was the greatest knowledge just sitting there and shutting my mouth. And I was with a buddy of mine, and I'm like, just shut your mouth and listen to these guys talk. Don't say nothing. That's the best thing. It was just so. And he thought I looked like Jody Hamilton. And I thought
nice.
I thought because I was doing a mask gimmick. Yeah, I was doing a wrestling gimmick, and I thought it was cool. And God bless him. I mean, he's severely missed in the wrestling community, but I mean, I had an opportunity, a brief opportunity to meet the Funkster, and it was a positive, it was just positive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I met a lot of guys too.
I never got to meet him. I interviewed him though over the phone, and
nice.
for like after I read the book, I was like, I want to interview Terry Funk, and I do search high and low to get his contact information. Could not get it at all. Like I just did not know. I did not. So all of a sudden, I was like, I'm gonna email Dave Meltzer. So I emailed Dave Meltzer. I was like, hey, any chance you know Terry's information, how to get a hold of him, this like that? I wrote this whole War and Peace letter to him to try to pitch it to him and see what I could do. I get an email back. It's just a phone number. That's all it is. And so I call it, and it's a landline.
Joe Namath pass, man.
Joe Namath pass. I call it, and Terry Funk answers. And I was like, hey, I work for WrestleZone. I read your book. I would like to interview you. And he's like, yeah, I'll do an interview. He's like, what time? And I'm like, how about 10 a.m. or something this next Wednesday? And he's like, let me write it down. So he like wrote it down. And sure enough, I talked to him for like an hour and a half or hour, 20 minutes. And then after the interview was all done, he was like, hey, give me a call anytime. I like talking to you. And I was like, okay. So every couple weeks, I would give Terry Funk a call and we would chat. And for like 20 minutes, and I would talk to this.
You can't make this stuff up.
No. And like I talked, so it was for over a year. I talked to him like on the phone, and like then in 2022, I believe it was, maybe 2000. I can't remember. Either way, it was in June. I missed a phone call from him, and sometimes like when I would miss a phone call from him, I was like, oh, I'll call him back. Or a lot of times I'd call him and he wouldn't answer, so I just leave him a message or whatever. So I tried calling him back. Boom, tried calling him. Nothing. I was like, I wonder if his number got changed or something. Sure enough, it did. And that's when he was put into the home and things like that. And I never got his information again. And I never spoke with him again.
So, but I mean, like I said, the opportunities that you have in this business is overwhelming. And it's just something, you know what I mean? Nobody can take that away from you and anybody that your brother, nobody can take that away from all of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It's a hidden community where it's like a hidden brotherhood of goodness. You know what I mean?
Those experiences, it's so cool. And it's pretty neat because it's like, yeah, I grew up a fan and I loved wrestling and stuff like that. Never would I have thought like any of this kind of stuff would have came to fruition where it was just like, this is what I'm kind of doing and like making things for myself. And like, yeah, I'm still a fan. Like, and I look at it differently now. And I listen to a podcaster, his name's John Middlecoff, and he covers football all the time. And he grew up a Niners fan, a Steve Young fan, and all that stuff about my age. And he's like, now he's just a podcaster. And he used to be a scout for the Eagles, but and he always says like, yeah, he's like, I'm still a fan of football, but not the kind that I was back then. It's like I still like what I do, but it's like now I look at it as like a job in a lot of ways. And there is that aspect where I look at it as a job, but it's also like, dude, I enjoy it. It's like still fun. You know.
Sweet. So I'm going to start with these lovely 5 questions.
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, Dominic, your favorite movie of all time.
It's between two. It's between two.
You know what? I'll give you an out. You can say both.
Okay. Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Oh, okay.
Or Rocky, the first Rocky.
Okay. Yeah. And especially today. I mean,
Rocky.
Italians love Rocky. We always beat people up after we watch it.
That's it.
Yeah. So, okay, your favorite all-time male professional wrestler of all time.
Scott Hall.
Okay. Your favorite female wrestler of all time.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like. That's tough.
Is it? Oh, geez.
I'm gonna have to go Thunder Rosa. I think. I like Thunder
Okay.
Rosa.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Glad she's
Becky Lynch is a
back.
close second. I think. Though.
Okay. I'm glad Thunder Rosa's back on the mend. I mean,
Yes,
she was doing such a good stuff. Now, the last wrestling question: your favorite tag team of all time?
Okay, I said before. I said it was the Motor City Machine Guns because I like TNA was cool and stuff like that, but like I remember just being like these young guys, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, especially Alex Shelley in particular. I was like, they could move, they got like cool style, cool personalities, and I remember being hooked to like, if I was trying to think like, oh yeah, from the Scott Hall standpoint, outsiders or whatever, but I kind of consider them like a tag team in certain ways. So two big stars together.
Okay, that's
so
good. I know it. That's no one's ever said that. That's
I think
first.
Machine Guns.
Okay. Now, if you listen to podcasts, what is your favorite podcast to listen to? If you're in your car or if you're working out, or it's the number one podcast that you want to listen to on any type of genre, from comedy to crime stories to sports.
I would say so. I haven't listened to him in years. So I guess I can't really say him, but Bill Burr, I'm a huge fan of. Like the Monday morning
he's I've listened to that one. Funny.
Oh, he pops me all the time. So recently, though, my big tune in one has been a podcast called Out for Smokes, and it's like these three comedians from New York, New Jersey area and stuff like that. And they'll go some political stuff, and I'm not politically tied with either party or nothing like that.
I feel you, yeah.
But it's just like they cover some stuff, I think, in a pretty diplomatic way. But it's funny shit, and it's dark. It's like some of it's dark, and like I'm just like, holy shit, they're like really pushing the envelope here and stuff like that. So I like that's been my really big go-to one week in and week out lately.
Gotcha.
So I think that would probably those are my big ones. Yeah.
Okay. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh man, that's tough. I'd like to think so. This is kind of a reflection on the whole industry at this moment in time, or our particular genre of pro wrestling writing and social media in the world. And I am always expecting the shoe to drop on this. Like, there's a lot of times where I don't think by the time this year's over, I don't know where I'm going to be at, because it's like there'll be gigs. So you said I'm the editor at Inside the Ropes. I'm no longer that editor. I'm no longer there.
Okay.
I am now at SE Scoops. So that's how quick.
The old Al Isaac stuff.
Yes.
Yes. I remember. Yeah, we did some stuff with Al many years ago.
Oh,
him and Chris Slash back. I mean, Chris Slash is no longer.
I remember that name.
Yeah.
So now it's Mike Shalek runs the whole thing, and he does a great job. And so I do daily coverage there. I don't do nearly as much as I did at WrestleZone. I do like about 3 or 4 articles a day. But I like that a lot. But the thing is like, so my Inside the Rope gig kind of ended, but that was unexpected. It was just like, so I think about that stuff. And then I think about YouTube. A lot of my money, the income that I make, is off of YouTube revenue of what those clips make and things like that.
Yeah, you're probably very good at doing clips. I can't do a clip to save my life. But
so I rely on like that kind of stuff, but I'm also like, you don't know how the algorithm goes. You don't know what gets capped on there. You don't know I am at prey to anything that when it comes to that stuff.
Okay.
So
you're a master of that, because if I say one F-bomb turns to 17 and my algorithms go down the tubes. So,
well, dude, I swear a lot though too on Sunday.
I do too.
Rob, I swear like crazy.
I'm a passionate individual, so that's how I do it.
There's nothing fucking wrong with that, Bubba.
Yeah. Nope, not a fucking bit. Not a fucking bit, Dominic. No, nope.
So in 5 years, it's very tough. Where do I see myself? I'd like to think I would be having a steady job. If I had my choice, it would either be now. I balance this out with being a journalist, so it's not like I'm angling for a job. Some point, I think I could contribute to a wrestling company in certain ways. But I won't let that necessarily compromise what I do as a writer or anything like that. I'll always find that balance. So I would ultimately like to either be working for a wrestling company or, in turn, doing what I'm doing, but at a higher level where it's like editing, running a site, being in charge of something like that. I think I would like to be, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total good sense.
Yeah.
One word to describe Dominic DeAngelo.
Optimistic.
Oh, that's good.
I think. Now that's tough. I'm not always optimistic, that's for sure. I'm at heart, I think I'm a cynic. Like in my head, I'm always thinking kind of negatively, but it's like fake it till you make it kind of thing is staying optimistic. It's like I do get that aspect where it's like, oh, that could possibly happen. I'll get those moments, those highs where it's just like, yeah, that'll happen. I can make it happen. I can make it work. But it's always like, there'll be that moment where you got to push back at that negativity, whereas I'm an immediate skeptic. I find myself being judgmental a lot of the times. I find myself all that kind of stuff where it's just like, boom, I have to not think in that kind of light and having those expectations and making assumptions. So optimistic, I'd like to think, and put that out at the ether.
Cool. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, Dominic. So how can everybody that's listening to the show, you can plug yourself, do something, like put everything out there right now. How can people get a hold of you? Where can they catch your podcasts and all your stuff?
Okay, so guys, if you do want to help me out, big time in a big way right now would be to subscribe. Go to rvdtv.com. I set up a particular YouTube channel for Rob Van Dam. He's got his own YouTube channel, and I help with that. Like I give clips and stuff there, but I really want to kind of build up this own personal podcast channel for him and like make this another source of revenue for him and me. So rvdtv.com is where I like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. I put clips up on there. Also go to Gagne and Magnum.com. Both of those are the YouTube channels. So you'll go to there. We'll eventually be doing giveaways too with Powertown figures and stuff like that as the podcast progresses and things move on. So GagneandMagnum.com, RVDTV.com. Now follow me on Twitter or X or whatever at Dominic DeAngelo. That right there.
Yeah, I'll have everything on when I take this down. I'll put everything in the queue on the YouTube because it'll be on Spotify and YouTube. And we'll definitely. And anytime you do a show, I always try to share it on my social media.
Thanks,
stuff.
man.
No,
and I'll keep, dude. The whole intro you had to this was awesome. This is a very slick, cool production on here already.
Oh, well, I get kind of like, I'm not good at graphics. I mean, and I'm good at like drawing Spider-Man and Marvel stuff, but I am not good. Yeah, I'm not good at like, I have to look at it and draw it, but still.
Nonetheless, yeah.
No, so I mean, I just try to do graphics. I do some graphics for some like some people in the Pittsburgh area, and I just try to get better. I don't think I'm any good, but I try, and I appreciate it. But I mean,
cool.
Well, and I appreciate you coming on, taking your time to come on and letting us hear all these awesome experiences that you have and still are going to have. And anything you got to plug, man, I will plug it, Dominic, on the show, and you can come back anytime. Anytime you want to come on and plug some stuff, you are welcome anytime. Just give me a call or, text me and I'll get you on anytime. That's a good thing about being a podcaster. You can put anytime. I can do it anytime. You know what I mean? So,
that's it.
Yeah,
you really can.
Yeah.
You can fire it up. So, Bubba, the feelings likewise. And anything you need, you can holler at me. And, I'll be happy to help out and promote whatever you got going on too.
Oh, cool. So, well, everybody, it was my pleasure interviewing Dominic DeAngelo. And I tell you what, guys, if you get a chance to hear his podcasts, please subscribe to his podcasts, and maybe we'll see him again at WrestleMania in the press conference.
I'll ask some sort of question. I'll hope to. Whoever may be.
There you go. There we go. So, hey, Dominic, thank you so much. And I tell you what, anytime you want to come on, just let me know. And I appreciate you for coming on. Thank you so much.
I'm game for it, brother. You gave the best intro I've ever had, so I appreciate it. Steve Martin,
God bless
boom, you nailed it.
Oh, well, I try. So thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And I tell you what, it's just an Dominic DeAngelo, everybody. Thank you for coming on, everybody. Have a great night.
Bubba, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.